We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
Someone.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and today I got my good friend Perch from Perch on Comics with me to discuss, something more upbeat and uplifting than we're normally used to talking about. What you up to, Perch?
Hey, not too much. It's always a good day for comics. It's a good day to talk to you, and I'm excited about this topic. There's a lot of great people in comics, and we're going to get into those.
We have a lot of I call it neutral content where we talk about things, very, I wouldn't say scientifically, but not really trying to take a one side or the other, just trying to present the information and, as matter of factly as possible. But I wanted to do something a little bit more positively with you today. And I said, who are like 10 people in the industry that maybe customers or retailers don't realize are really important and that they could reach out to or maybe learn something from, that are really positive influences in the industry. Because I'm a fan of, Scott Snyder, Brian Hill, but I kind of talk about those people all the time. And so we wanted to name off 10 people that maybe are new names, or maybe they hadn't thought of previously as people that are really positive role models or adding something very positive to the industry.
Yeah, I think it's great. And the key thing to know about comics, and it's easy to get caught up in the videos and the problems. And when you're looking at comics critically, when you're looking at comics from an analysis perspective, it often, you look at the goods and you look at the bads, and the bads often have more weight. So it's easy to just get caught up in all that. But the thing to remember is comics is a industry and a hobby of passion, by and large. Yes, there are some bad people who are bad actors in comics, but the vast majority are actually good people trying to do the good things, maybe for their own reasons, maybe not lining up with you, but they're actually trying to move this industry forward. And that's just true in general, is we're lucky to have an industry of generally decent people, by and large. Mm-hmm. But we've got some names, I think, this morning.
Yeah, so let's introduce the viewers to maybe 10 people maybe they're aware of, but maybe they're not exactly aware of all the great things they're doing for comics in the industry. Who's the first name?
Yeah, so first names is actually a pair. So there's a family business, Adrian Wassel and Damian Wassel, who are the owners of Vault Comics, and that's a publisher probably most of you have heard of. But Vault is a family business. And what's interesting to know behind the scenes, maybe like their comics, but in terms of what they do, they pay on time, they don't overcommit. That's always been a company that reaches out proactively to retailers, and they preference loyalty. If you talk to anybody in the industry who's done business with them, you hear the same things. They keep their word. They try to do things. They try, in some cases, stretch to make sure that their comics are well understood. And the other interesting thing from a retailer and a buyer perspective is they drive good discussions at Diamond. They've been one of the publishers, who's been at the front and center with Diamond, trying to enact change and speaking out and taking the sides of the fans and taking the sides of retailers. They've commented on variant covers and how that needs to be a more fair system. They've often reached out to retailers and customers around comics that are late and how can they make it right. If a comic's damaged in a box, they're often faster to the table than Diamond. So those two, in a company, they're interesting to follow, to look out for. It's just a good place to go.
I love Vault Comics. They kind of just came on my radar in the last year, but I would say 50% of their current lineup are must reads for me. And I didn't even realize that it was a family-owned business and that they were such a positive influence in the market. That's awesome.
They are, and there's a lot to learn from them. I mean, there's some good history there, and there's just you can find articles. They're not glory hounds. You don't see them out trying to grab attention every chance you get, but you do see a lot of good things about that company. So check it out. You can just start at Wikipedia and move your way in, but that's a great company to get to know. And yes, the content. We talked all about that without the content, like you just mentioned. The comics they're producing are really good. So in addition to just producing good stuff, they're doing good things for comics.
That's awesome. All right. So who's the next name to know?
So John Jackson Miller, and that may be a name that some of you know, but you probably know what he does and what he's involved in. That's ComicCon, and that's a resource out there that tracks the numbers and the sales and other things in comics. And you may not care about if comics are selling or not. Maybe you're a person who just likes what they like and wants to read good books, and whether it sells or not is not really your concern. And if so, good for you. That's great. But ComicCon also does a lot of great analysis to kind of debunk a lot of the industry is doing amazing or the industry is failing. If you're ever in an argument with somebody, you're trying to just track how a comic is doing. These people put in, blood, sweat, and tears to make that site, very robust, have a lot of data in it. And the thing that always strikes me is every now and then they're wrong, and they publicly admit they're wrong, just quickly and clearly. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow ComicCon, you can ask questions. I'm amazed that usually within an hour, they'll answer you, and they'll come back with data and analysis. And I just think it's, John is a good guy and has always worked hard to provide good data and has written books, and it's just a great site.
As someone who, I was an intelligence analyst, back in my military days, is someone who's taken large amounts of data and compiled them. The amount of work that they did to go back, like for 80 years and get all of that history that they didn't have to do. No one paid them to do it. No one's gonna pay them to do it. But he did it as a labor of love because he loves the medium. He is a comic book writer as well. If I read his Knights of the Old Republic omnibus, it was actually great. Yep. So he's somebody I have a lot of respect for. And you're right on social media. One of the few accounts that is really willing to go out there and engage with people. And he wants the people behind ComicCon absolutely want to engage people and talk about all this stuff because he, in his heart, he loves comics and he is absolutely a numbers nerd.
Yeah. No, and I think I like the guy and I like the service they provide. And I think, like me, there's a built-in irritation sometimes at the amount of bad information that gets floating around. It's kind of how I get hot and irritated when people talk about overships incorrectly. I love the fact that they're out there and just not dunking on people, just putting out facts and trying to leave the industry a more educated, a healthier place. That's
okay. Who's the next name?
So everybody will know this guy, but a lot of people don't know him on Twitter. It's Ron Guardi. So Ron Guardi, of course, is a very, very famous artist, done comic books all over the place. You undoubtedly have heard of him. But on social media, not only is he kind of out of the drama, not getting involved in any of the various shenanigans, but also is very willing to help people behind the scenes, very friendly at cons, is somebody who is, I guess, unafraid of new artists coming in. And I've seen him interact with artists saying, wow, you're going to be better than me in 2 years. Here's some ways to help you do it. And he takes that philosophy of just, it's a healthier industry if I'm pushing people to be better than I am. And I think that's awesome. I wish more creators took that stance, but Ron Guardi is a friend to all comics. He does not take sides, and he's been very pleasant.
I think channel viewers know I'm a huge fan of his. I've reviewed his comics and his art specifically in very high regard. I talked about his art with Tim Lim in my top 5 comic artists of 2019, in fact. Mm-hmm. But I haven't really told anybody this story. So back, when the channel was really small, maybe I had 300, maybe 400 subscribers. I did a review of his Savage Sword of Conan comic book, and he actually DM'd me and told me that he appreciated the review, and it really gave me a lot of confidence in it felt like my work was being appreciated because, at that point, you don't get a lot of traction. Not a lot of people are wanting to talk to you and everything. So to have the artist on the comic actually message me and be like, hey, I appreciated the review. You did a good job. It was something I didn't expect, and I really, really appreciated.
Yeah, no, he's very friendly. He reaches out, and like I said, he's happy to give advice. There's plenty of stories from other retailers where he signed things for free. He's very indirectly, again, I can't confirm the story. It didn't happen to me, but enough retailers talked about it. I believe it to be true. Comic got shipped damaged to a shop. Guardi reached out to the shop that complained on social media. They didn't tag Guardi in. He happened to see it and made it up for the shop by signing some copies and making sure that, when they did get their stock a couple weeks later, it was in good condition. And this is good guy comic behavior. And I think that's, again, sets a great example for the industry and somebody definitely to follow if you're not doing it now.
Absolutely. All right. Who's next?
All right. So next one, some may know this name, Chuck Radowsky. And Chuck Radowsky is he's the owner and kind of creator of Mile High Comics. And why I put him on this list is going to be for an unusual reason. So way back, you have to be old to remember this. He was a columnist for Comic Buyer's Guide, and he was kind of unique among shop owners because he went very transparent with a lot of retailer business and how it worked. And he wrote about it and talked about it in a way that was friendly to the fans. He had a philosophy that if fans were more readers and customers were more educated about comics, it made for a healthier business overall. So he was quick to share information as he built his empire. And he certainly built quite a big empire. And there's a lot of little comic shops that do not like the big empire he grew, but he did it fairly, he did it honestly, and he did it up front. The other thing that kind of rings out in my mind is he took a very tough stance against the San Diego Comic-Con for what he considered kind of two big flaws in comics. One was the variant exclusives and that whole business model that he felt were hurting comics. Now, obviously, Mile High trades in a lot of variants, but he believed that the system needed to be upfront, transparent, and not damaging to retailers big and small. And he's taken it to David Gabriel and many others within the industry about why this is harmful to customers and the business. He also went at the con for basically their infusion of movies and pop culture and things outside of comics, which he felt took the attention away. So he was fighting for some things that I think are pretty correct for where comics are concerned, and he continues to do it. And he runs a business that a lot of people say is again ethical and good and customer first and customer friendly. If you've dealt with Mile High Comics online, they do have a good policy of returns and dealing with you if there's a problem in a positive way. So I think he's a good guy to know and a good guy that's helped the business.
And he was quite the prognosticator because at this point, comics are a complete afterthought at San Diego Comic-Con. It's basically just a pop culture convention, and they put comic books and Artist Alley kind of in a corner.
He did. Yeah, absolutely. He's smart. If you want to know about the business and want to get a good sense of where the future is going, there's a guy to learn and follow because he's dead on with his predictions. And remember, when he pulled out of the San Diego Comic-Con and said, Mile High is not going to support it anymore, that was a pretty major move for him. Online was growing fast, and that could have potentially really backfired, but he did it on principle, and I give him credit for it.
Definitely have to admire that. What's the next name people need to know?
So you mentioned earlier, so now I feel like I'm giving you an obvious one. But if you're one of the 2% who has not followed or heard of Brian Edward Hill, there is a writer you definitely need to do it. And so we've talked about him over and over again. But for me personally, he gave me an interview he didn't need to give right at the height of Dawn of X. He spent a lot of time, and the thing that I guess I really want to praise him for is he's transparent. Again, he will put out information, he'll help people, he'll talk about problems, and he'll do so in a fair and even-handed way. And he doesn't play games. I have watched people go at him and just watched him turn the other cheek and not get involved in any fights. But he knows a lot about the business, he knows a lot about screenwriting, and he's also unique in the sense that a lot of comic writers are playing this game where they're doing comics with the desire to just go into movies. And Brian plays in both fields, still has a passion for both, and we'll talk about the differences between the two and how you go from one to the other. So if you're, for whatever reason, if you have not caught on to Brian Edward Hill on Twitter, an amazing follow, and again, somebody who will happily chat with you and do so on good faith.
He's one of the most honest voices, within the creator community on social media. He doesn't just use it for promotion, which I praise him for a lot, but he does it to engage with people, and he'll give his honest opinions about some things. And a lot of times he goes against the grain of what Hollywood or entertainment or kind of are trying to put out there. So I really appreciate that. And he's just, in my opinion, I like Scott Snyder. I like Sean Gordon Murphy. I think Blake Northcott is great. But I do think Edward Hill is the role model for other creators to look at on how to have a social media presence and engage with fans. I think he's just simply the best.
I can't agree more. I think he does an amazing job, and I'm hoping to share a beer with him in a few weeks. So we'll see.
Awesome. What's the next one?
So I've got one more kind of positive name, and I'm going to surprise people with three maybe controversial names. But the last one is again a group of three, and this is Danae Ringelman, Eric Schnell, and Salvia Rubin. And who are those people? Those are the founders of IndieGoGo. And why those are relevant to comics? I mean, crowdfunding obviously is a big thing, but you got to keep in mind the struggle of what they put together. Kickstarter was a bit of a monarch in the sense. Kickstarter certainly did not play fair in the market and threw a lot of obstacles in front of these three. And they created a platform that attempted by all accounts to be apolitical, let people do what they're going to do, and they continue to refine their platform to try and make it easier and easier for people to get their content out, whatever it might be. And so they're doing, I think, a lot of just world good in terms of helping creators get things out and meet the needs of fans. But they're doing a lot in particular for comics. I mean, all the stuff we've talked about, all the stuff we've seen around various crowdfunding campaigns and everything else. I talked a lot about retailers here. People who've heard me before know I believe in everything should rise. Retail should rise. Crowdfunding should rise. Everything needs to rise in order for comics to be great. And so these three have been pushing very hard with IndieGoGo to make a platform that people can sell comics on and many other things. And I think it's very, very beneficial to the industry right now.
You know, I couldn't agree more. You know, I have a negative view of Kickstarter, but my view of IndieGoGo is much more positive. First, because it creates competition for Kickstarter, but really one of the issues that I personally see in the industry is nepotism and cronyism. It's very hard for even talented people to get their foot in the door. You know, Todd McFarlane was rejected 300 times. You know, Rick Remender has talked about how the culture in the industry, you know, don't go and do it because it's not really worth it. And I love that IndieGoGo is there as an opportunity and a platform for people who feel like the doors are closed to them and they're not given an opportunity to go and get noticed and get their product out there and go build their customer base and go and deliver comic books and show people that there are great comics, there are great comic writers, there are great artists that are being shut out of the industry, but there is a platform for them that is available, and they can go find their audience that way. I think it's brilliant.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think that you got to give them some credit because we've seen people on all sides try and take shots at them to get a project that they don't like taken off for various reasons. And there's no one group that can claim they haven't done it. Everybody has tried to tinker with somebody else's campaign. And IndieGoGo, unlike Kickstarter, has by and large said, we're not going to get involved in these fights. Somebody wants to sell something, we're creating a platform, the end. And they've withstood the criticism. A lot of people have taken shots at IndieGoGo, and these three in particular, especially Eric Schell, about them being, you know, this or that. And they've said, you know, we don't care. Our principles are our principles, and stuff can get sold, and that's the line we're going to hold. So for that, I think great people to know. And again, great tech prognosticators. Follow them. They give a lot of good, interesting talks about how the industry is going to go and how direct selling can work and everything else. And you can learn a lot.
Awesome. All right. So let's get to the three more controversial, three more industry names that maybe people have an idea about who they are, but you think that they're great for the industry and good for everybody.
Yeah. So there's going to be, so here you go. So here's three people, kind of four people. And I want to preface this by saying they try to do right by fans, by customers, and by shops. And some people are really going to take disagreement with one of the names I'm going to throw out there. But keep in mind, at the end of the day, we're trying to sell comics. We're trying to read comics. We're trying to do the right thing for people who want to be involved in this hobby. So the first, it's very strange to hear this coming out of my mouth, but Steve Geppi, who is he? He is the owner of Diamond. Now, why would I put him on any kind of list with, you know, a lot of issues I've had with Diamond and the industry in general? So keep in mind, he founded Diamond and he owned it back a long time ago, in the 80s, I mean, decades ago. And he did it at a time when the industry was having a lot of trouble. And he put a lot of his own money and own skin in the game to make sure this could happen. He's you know, quite old now, still running the business, and there's a lot of talk that maybe he should actually start to hand it down to, you know, his son or to other people to get the business modernized, and that's quite true. But you can't deny the guy has done a lot for comics over the years, and even if the mechanics of how comics are shipped out and the engagement with how publishers and small publishers can get into Diamond, we've heard a lot of publishers struggle with you know, weird practices and random things out of Diamond. Keep in mind that's happening at a lower level. You go up to the guy at the top. Yes, he should fix his house, but this is somebody who's created a pop culture museum, puts a lot of good data out there, and cares about comics. So weird to hear me say it, but Steve Geppi, we owe a lot to him in the industry, and he has tried to do net good for comics.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're bringing something a little bit more controversial to this video. I thought it was all going to be, you know, puppy dogs and ice cream. It's an interesting take, but I do agree with you on several levels. he did not make his business to be a monopoly. It was
Correct.
other people's mistakes that put him in that position. And could things be done better? Absolutely. But without Diamond Comics distributors being there right now, there wouldn't be an industry. So he's been quite vital, and like you said, he has a legacy in the industry that where he has done great work. So I appreciate you giving an honest assessment of a person with a business that some people might not like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's helped. The next two, I'm going to put two together here. So these are writers for the respective Marvel and DC companies. And again, many people dislike them for their politics or things they say online. But Matt Rosenberg and Steve Orlando, the two of them, both hustle day in and day out to get their comics known and understood. And both of them, at various times, through various struggles, have worked against the tide to make sure that stores and customers are informed of what's going on. They're both aware, even though they can't necessarily admit it in public, that the marketing and the push and the promotion and the solicitation text for their books are just not anywhere close to where they should be. And so they come and they try and fill the gap. It's not their job, but they take it on. They both also donate a ton of material at their own expense for stores, for charities, for various other things to just try and help spread comics. And so a lot of people take the piss out on both of them for either their writing or their kind of, again, their politics or other things on social media, but both are trying to kind of make up for what is a gap in comics.
I personally am not the biggest fan of either one of them as far as their writing goes, although I did think Rosenberg was onto something with Uncanny X-Men before that kind of fell off the rails. But, as far as their online or social media presence, I think Rosenberg is really fair.
Yeah, I would agree.
You can say a lot of stuff to him, and he will basically be civil and give you his opinion, but he's never mean or snarky or ever rude. I haven't really interacted with Orlando very much or at all. I don't really remember kind of what he's done, but I think it's two good inclusions, and I think Rosenberg is a great name to be using.
Yeah, I think in general with comic fans, and I'll throw this out there for his perspective, and a lot of people respond with nope, they said something on Twitter I don't like, they won't get my money. And that's an absolutely fair perspective. I get it. It is your money. You should feel happy about how you're spending it, 100%. At the same time, some of these people have interesting stories to tell, good information to share, and can help in the industry if you are able to look past at times what can be a lot of kind of immaturity and silliness. I'm talking about Rosenberg and Orlando, but people like Greg Pak have a newsletter and have a blog and put a ton of information out there for aspiring comic creators. And if you can ignore the heavy political slant that sometimes come on, or the kind of the angry screed that sometimes happens from people, there's a lot of good data in there, and I encourage people to seek it out.
All right, so what's the last name? Is he really controversial? Is this gonna?
So
are
no,
you gonna get my channel, kicked out or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody is going to agree with this, but I want to say I'm saying this from a retailer perspective. Okay, and so retailer ultimately means customer. So this editor at Marvel, Alana Smith, has got probably most of the viewers blocked, has a very famous tweet talking about we will remember who voted for Trump, and a lot of very big things was part of the whole milkshake stuff and everything else. So I offer zero excuses for any of that. I think, especially as an editor, you're an ambassador in many cases to shops and fans, and that's a very bad thing to do. I completely 100% no disagreement with that. However, I'll offer this additional perspective. This is a person who has proactively reached out to comic shops and in many cases reached out to fans and said, I saw something you wrote. I'm interested to learn more. Tell me what you're talking about. A couple of people, including myself, were talking about additional content that was going into comics, these director's cut comics. And she took it upon herself to fight a pretty uphill battle within Marvel of people who were in complete disagreement to any change based on what fans, customers, and retailers were telling her. And she has done a lot in terms of, when the solicitation's been wrong, she's reached out, she's provided comps to stores, she's provided advanced copies to people. And again, this is somebody who has, in many cases, a lot of editors came into Marvel. I do get the sense it's somebody who actually likes comics and wants to be in the business. And again, disagree with her on maybe 99% of kind of her social comments and how she is, but I cannot deny this is somebody who is trying to help comics. So again, she's blocked tons of people, but there is material out there, and it is nice, comforting, at least for me, to know that there is an editor out there who is at least trying to keep their eye on the ball where the business is concerned. So there you go. Everybody can hate me for that. That and Coldplay. There you have it.
Well, Perch, 9 out of 10 ain't bad. I'm gonna have to disagree with you on this one. As being an editor at the major publishing company in North America, blockbotting people. She's got me blocked. I've never spoken to her before in my life. Yep. Threatening to blacklist creators for voting for the wrong person. These are, I won't call them unforgivable sins, but they're severely unprofessional. So I am glad that she is taking steps to go and try and help retailers and maybe meet some of the customer needs, but she can't see 90% of her customers anyway.
I agree. And these are, like I said at the beginning, these are things that you can't get over. I guess I'd ask everybody to think about it this way. When we find somebody who's doing small positive things for the industry and others are not, how do we get those positive things surfaced? How do we get more communication about those positive things? And so where Alana Smith's concerned and others who do good things, but maybe there's a lot of other, a greater amount of negative things they do. I think all of us as fans, if we want to have a great time in comics, we've got to pull out that positive behavior, and we got to start broadcasting it. Not the person, but we have to start broadcasting the positive behavior, because it's not necessarily a pat on the back to Alana Smith, but it is a message out to all the aspiring editors and other companies of, hey, this is a good thing to do. Do more of this. And so if we can take some of these examples of good things and we can push it out, comics will be a better place. And if we only sit and say, hey, this is a terrible person doing terrible things, how do we block? I agree, that's wrong. But we then get no benefit from the positive things that are being done. So we have to pull out those positive activities and get them in the hands of, in many cases, better people who don't have everybody blocked. But, I have to, give credit where credit's due. Good actions are in short supply in comics in many cases. So something to think about. A lot of people can disagree with me. It's totally fair. But the good actions, I guess I'll make this plea. Let's start talking more about the good actions that people are doing, whoever they might be.
Well, Perch, I want to say thank you so much. Some great names, some great information. There are companies that I support. I didn't even realize all the great things that they were doing. So I really appreciate you giving some perspective. We don't have to agree on everything, but we do agree that we love comic books. And I believe that Perch on Comics is probably the best YouTube channel for comic information, especially industry news. And if you haven't subscribed to Perch's channel yet, there is a link in the video description below to his channel. There will also be a button at the end screens as well, to where you can go click on that and go find his channel. And there will also be another link to where you can go to his channel during the video as well. Please, if you're not subscribed to Perch on Comics, you're doing it wrong. Go to this man's channel and give him a subscribe. He's got the best content out there.
You're overly kind. There's a lot of, just like there's a lot of great people in comics, there's a lot of great commentators out there like yourself. How can I leave out the most positive guy in comics? You. So, and of course the fans. So let's thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure talking about this stuff, and food for thought.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.